Hey guys, All in Crypto here, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another YouTube video. Today we're going to be doing something pretty different from what we usually do around about this time every single day. Instead of a really one specific cryptocurrency video, we are going to be talking about the crypto market. We had promised you a video where we tackled commodities, and we're going to be diving into commodities within this video because it's relevant. Every single thing taking place right now within the world, whether that be macroeconomic shifts, whether that be potential monetary policy regimes failing or going through some turmoil, has an effect on our markets. And when we have the likes of commodities rising on the back end of stimulus and monetary policy tightening, it really creates a recipe for a tightening economy. And what I mean by that is a period where the economy isn't so flush. So we're going to be going back in time to March 2020, and we're going to be tying that into everything because it's relevant. March 2020 saw the Federal Reserve and many governments around the world resort to essentially flooding the system with money. They were Jerome Powell's exact words. So what they essentially did was they printed money to push into the economy in the face of a complete collapse based on the fact that everything had essentially shut down, which of course went in many cases directly into markets, of course the crypto market being one of the beneficiaries of that. We are now having that stimulus and that stimulating and QE is no longer there. We're also now, a lot of governments, some faster than others, the Federal Reserve are essentially stopping their bond buybacks and a number of other things this month, or set to stop it this month. The European Bank are looking for Q3. The European Central Bank are looking for Q3 of this year, so they're doing a little bit later. But this is all on the back end of an economy that already potentially isn't doing so well. And when we talk about commodity prices going up, who does that hurt? Who does that really affect? In the UK, which is where I'm based, we are seeing a exponential rise in gas and oil prices. People's bills are going up and their wages are not accommodating that. So their money is going less far, and many people, I'm not quite sure what the statistics in the UK are, but in the US, 40% of all Americans do not even have $1,000 set aside for an emergency. Now, their bills may have gone up, certainly if you look at it over a year, significantly more than $1,000. So how do they accommodate for that? Well, they become less fruitful. They stop spending on things that potentially drive the economy and really focus and hone in on essentials. And it causes this real tightening. Everything that's taking place with geopolitical events is amplifying. We know that Russia are a huge exporter of oil, nickel, wheat, and a number of other things. They also have a lot of mines over there. That's sort of tightening supply when the demand hasn't reduced. So it's basic supply and demand is causing these things to go through the roof. Now, we are seeing a pullback for commodities, but ultimately I think commodities are going to continue to excel. We had the consumer price index today for the United States, which came out at 7.9%. Now, when you look at, so what the CPI does is it essentially is the consumer price index. It goes over a basket of produce that are bought by consumers within the US and essentially says, okay, well, how much have these gone up by? Now, they manipulate that figure and essentially choose what they do put in it and what they don't put in it, but some things are a constant. Remember, the CPI today was for February, so last month. It's always a month behind, if you will. I think this is going to actually accelerate and continue. It doesn't really show too many signs of stopping, given the fact that you're getting this CPI number before we've seen these absolute moon spikes for a lot of commodities out there. So how does that, and it's very interesting, the CPI, because the CPI monitors inflation. Bitcoin was created, if you look at Satoshi's vision, it's really about giving people a sound monetary system that hedges the dollar. Hedges fiat systems, the dollar mainly. It was really, you know, if you look at the first Genesis block, within it you had the Chancellor has agreed or will be proceeding with, I can't quite remember it, but essentially we're saying the Chancellor proceeding with bank bailouts back in 2008. It was created in the wake of what was apparent to Satoshi a failing monetary system, and he's been extremely accurate today, and it's still present today. But you would expect with the CPI, we'll switch this back to candles. the CPI being as high as it is, a kind of a spike up for Bitcoin. But instead it hasn't. It's really acting more like your kind of NASDAQ and a number of other speculative kind of assets out there. Bitcoin and crypto is really speculative. So what we're really going to do in this video is just talk about everything, talk about things that are going on, because it's important for you guys as investors, and many of you, this is your first journey into the investment world. It's important for you to have a well-rounded view of everything that's going on. Crypto no longer really moves off its own fundamentals, or it does in certain time periods and doesn't in others. And right now it's more acting accordingly to macroeconomics and geopolitical events. And this is the total money within the crypto space. We are still not doing too badly at all, in my opinion. Given everything that's taken place, crypto has actually shown, as it is deemed a very speculative asset class, a very risky asset class, some strength in the face of everything, which is good. But at the same time, personally, I actually thought Bitcoin would do a little bit better. We saw gold spike up along with commodities as people look for a kind of hedge, as people look for safety in a uncertain economy. Also, the dollar saw a spike up, but within the dollar currency index, it is an index that is comprised of many nations whose currencies are actually getting hit quite badly. The euro and the European currency being a big one, but there's also some currencies are gaining strength against the dollar. So it's extremely interesting what's taking place right now, and there's lots of speculation about the dollar and its credibility. There's lots of speculation. One thing that March 2020 really did was highlight the Federal Reserve, and highlight the credibility of the Federal Reserve and thus the dollar. And with what's taking place with Russia, it's really essentially Russia have been boycotted from using the US dollar, so they're going to look for an alternative. And there's a lot of speculation that that may be a commodity-based currency, and Bitcoin may fare well in this whole thing. So it sounds very doom and gloom. One thing that's important to remember is crypto is a technological revolution that is nowhere near fulfilled the journey that it's on. It's a very small market. People think that we've kind of had a boom and that the bubble's kind of, been and gone or whatever. We've not even seen any kind of a bubble or a potential bubble for crypto, in my opinion. It's not got to there's not been enough trillions within it to classify it as a bubble by today's standards, where we literally have monopoly money. $1 trillion today isn't $1 trillion back in the dot-com boom. It's maybe $10 trillion. So that's probably not quite accurate, but it's a lot more money in today's terms. So this video is just about sort of talking about everything. I'd love your guys' opinions in the comment section. What do you think about everything? How are you finding these markets? We are very tethered, but it is important to remember that this is a technological revolution, just like the motoring industry, just like the railroad industry, just like any technological revolution before it. And there's always turbulence within that. And if you look at the likes of the Amazon chart back in 2010, it looks very similar. And there's a number of other charts that have actually done very well after having looked like this. And that's because there's a fundamental driver behind it, in this case being a technology that's yet to be adopted and really embraced. So it's going to be very interesting. We're on uncharted waters for the cryptocurrency space, in the sense that this is the first time it's really had to deal with these kind of pressures. And it's going to be very revealing and telling to see how it holds up. But the use cases for blockchain are limitless. Just today, I was talking with a country that's using blockchain for media and to really enhance the media industry. And that's just one of many, many cases. And that's a real bullish. So it's something to be bullish on. But in the short term, and we have stressed this on other videos, I think we go through some volatility. We had a pump for crypto yesterday that was really on the back end of the... there was some leaked data involving Janet Yellen and her sort of thoughts, her standpoint on the executive order that is now officially being published by the Biden administration to tackle cryptocurrencies. And they essentially are saying a number of things. They want to prohibit illicit activity, and they want to make it safe for consumers, and also that they want to be the leaders within this technological revolution, within the payment system, within the finance system, within the inclusive finance system. So there's very much two sides to this story, but both sides are extremely relevant. We've got a restricting economy, and again, when oil prices go up, who gets hurt the worst? It's the poorer end of society. It's the spender end of society. It's the middle class are really getting hollowed out and actually pushed down into what would be deemed the lower class. And it's a really interesting time to be alive. And there's also the questions, this was a report from Credit Suisse and one of the analysts from there. It was originally, or I got this post from Sophia Zeller, and it's called Bretton Woods 3. Now, those of you familiar with the previous two Bretton Woods will know that it involves monetary policy and how it changes and evolves, and how we've gone from one monetary system to another, or one backed monetary system to a not backed monetary system. And now they're suggesting we may go back to a backed monetary system. So I'll read this quickly. We have read it previously. It only came out on the 7th of March. So it's 3 days old, and then we'll kind of talk about everything else and really wrap things up. So the Bretton Woods 3, we are witnessing the birth of Bretton Woods 3, a new world monetary order centered around commodity-based currencies in the East that will likely weaken the euro-dollar system and also contribute to inflation forces in the West. A crisis is unfolding, a crisis of commodities. Commodities are a collateral, and collateral is money. And this crisis is about the rising allure of outside money over inside money. Bretton Woods 2 was built on inside money, and its foundations crumbled a week ago when the G7 seized Russian FX reserves, which essentially is forcing Russia to now look for an alternative. Russia are quite a big player in the economic game, in the global economic game. We're seeing almost a crumbling of globalization at this point. This crisis is not like anything we've seen since President Nixon took the US dollar off the gold standard in 1971. The end of an era of commodity-based money. When this crisis and war is over, the US dollar should be much weaker, and on the flip side, the remnants much stronger. Backed by a basket of commodities from the Bretton Woods era, backed by gold bullion, to Bretton Woods 2, backed by inside money, treasuries with unhedged fiscal risk, to Bretton Woods 3, backed by outside money, gold bullion and other commodities. After this war is over, money will never be the same again, and Bitcoin, if it still exists, will probably benefit from it. Absolutely. This is why this is such an interesting situation for Bitcoin, because it was designed for a failing fiat system. It was designed in wake of a failing fiat system. That was Satoshi's vision, to create a system of value that people could essentially transact with one another. It could be used, and it was outside of government controls. So that would explain to me why it's done better than what I had initially thought it was, but it still is acting very speculative. And the reason being is because you have speculators in it. Bitcoin's history has largely been shaped by, there's fundamental things that drive Bitcoin, but there's also a lot of speculation. It's evident on these kind of run-ups. And one thing that we do see for Bitcoin and crypto at the moment is, and remember, we focus on Bitcoin because it determines what the rest of the market does. If you want that evidence, go and look at the Bitcoin chart, go and look at the total chart. They're extremely similar, ladies and gentlemen. And then, of course, go to total 2 and take Bitcoin out of the equation. It just follows the same sort of trajectory. We are at very low retail involvement for both Bitcoin and crypto. And this is interesting because we actually made this high here without it. Now, with regulatory clarity, we should get a spot ETF. Spot ETF is huge because it essentially is going to allow and give Wall Street the green light to monetize Bitcoin and push it. We've not seen, in my opinion, any kind of real serious. We have seen some big money from institutions come into crypto and then come back out of it, but we've not seen that big institutional boom yet, in my opinion. And that comes off the back end of regulatory clarity, which, from this order being set, I think there is 180 days. The order came out today or yesterday, I believe, which is well worth a read. So it's a very interesting time to be alive. We have a lot to think about and a lot to examine and watch moving forward, given the fact that we have what is looking like a tightening economy already before any of this Russia-Ukraine situation, and we have the likes of the Federal Reserve having to rein in escaped interest rates, and now we have commodities going through the roof, which causes more of a restricting of the economy because people are just less flush and less, you know, there's less money to spend, and we've gone from a period, March 2020, system got flooded with money, no longer being so flush, and oh, guess what? We've got added pressures of everything. So how crypto is going to fare in this is going to be interesting. My overarching view is that we will get through this after this turmoil. Could be on the back end of this year, could be, you know, in a couple of months. Remember, this market can change on a dime. It can change on news. It's just a case of really sitting back, watching. If you're a hodler like myself, you're going to huddle through it, just like you huddled through March 2020, just like you huddled through 2018, which I've done, and it's paid me to do that today. And that's why I'm a hodler, because I'm a believer in this technology, and I'm a believer in the fact that this technology is nowhere near where it's going. It's got a long journey ahead of it, and there's lots of value to the tunes of trillions of dollars that is still yet to pour into this market. Remember, crypto at its peak only got to $3 trillion. The dot-com boom in 1999 got to $5.5 trillion at its peak. That was in 1999, before we had the volume of money that we have today. So there's a lot more money can flow into this asset class. And it has a very wide reach. Crypto blockchain can be applied to pretty much any industry, and change it and make it more efficient in a number of different ways. So we are going to be watching everything. It's important you guys understand this moving forward. They just stopped actually trading nickel, I think, at this point on the on a number of markets. It's not traded since the 8th, since we had this spike, because it was just getting insane to the point where lots of things are probably going to collapse on the back end of this. People go, okay, well, it's just nickel, it's just wheat, it's just oil. You know, oil is in everything. Wheat is in everything. You know, corn is in everything. All these commodities are getting very expensive, and it's really going to burden the masses. But there is this argument, and it's a really good argument, that may see crypto see the next leg for it. Yes, I think we're probably in for some sort of short-term chop, but governments around the world, and we've already heard, I was listening to the UK Parliament session, and Boris was essentially getting grilled on, okay, well, we're going to have to help people out here. And he was saying, absolutely, we are going to have to help people out. We already are, or they say they are, even though they still have a ridiculously high tax on oil. If they want to help people out and reduce costs, stop taxing everything to infinity. Just my opinion. Might not be the right one, might be the wrong one. It might be the right one. But, you know, they're going to have to, in my opinion, in the long run, through all the smoke, start to re-stimulate the economy again, which sees your assets continue to go higher, and the likes of Bitcoin, which is already at a very tender spot, given the fact that it is potentially on the verge of global acceptance, global adoption, which is the next thing coming for crypto, in my opinion. So this was a very different video. It's always worth me touching base and doing these videos. Some of you may not appreciate it, some of you may. But it's good for me to share my thoughts with everybody. What's my position as an investor in this is probably something that is good to ask. Well, I'm a hodler. I believe in a lot of the cryptos that I accumulate. The small speculative altcoins are exactly that. You know the risk getting into them. When they sell off, they sell off. But your likes of, for me, Bitcoin, Ethereum, you know, Cardano, a number of other ones, you know, I've invested in them because of the fundamentals behind them, because of what they can achieve and where potentially they're going. Volatility is exactly that for me in that case. Volatility, trying to time the market. You know, you'll get all these people going, oh, I told you so, and yeah, I got this right and got that right. It's nonsense for the most part. Yes, some people have called things rather accurately. You know, we were calling Bitcoin down here. We were calling a lot of cryptos. Some of the cryptos that we've called on this channel publicly have done more than 100x. But we also get things wrong. And that's called being an investor. You're never going to time everything with 100% accuracy. And for something like Bitcoin, being a hodler in the long run has worked. But that isn't to say that there isn't more chop and turmoil in front of us, because I do think there is, based on everything. Just like when we got this pump, this most recent pump for Bitcoin, we told you, don't FOMO in. These markets are not trader markets. These markets are sit on your hands. If you dollar cost average, okay, continue to do so. Keep a little bit of dry powder, sit on your hands and wait to see how everything unfolds, because you are essentially trying to trade geopolitical events. It's like Raul said, don't even bother. Unless you're already got a long macro view, like we're speaking to somebody later who I'm hopefully going to get a video of me and him discussing things published, where we are looking at, and he called for a commodity bull run over 6 months ago. He's been spot on. He called for single digit oil before March 2020 was even a thing. You know, well before March 2020. And then he also called it going back up to triple digits, which is done. So unless you're a long-term macro trender that has planned and calculated for all this and seen a lot of this coming based on the macro trends, then sure, trade accordingly. But you're a long-term trader at that point that is really seizing the opportunity. To short-term day trade, there's nothing wrong with taking a position now, like me DCAing and holding on to my cryptos for what comes later. But to short-term trade, these markets, I have seen many traders get shipwrecked in these waters. When the seas are calm, most ships look good. When the seas aren't, it really separates the boys from the men, or the women from the girls, the girls from the women. So that's really all I have for you guys. It was a lot longer one. It's important for me to always touch base with you guys, to look at things, to see what is faring well in this environment, like gold. You know, the dollar's doing okay, but then again, that's really, the dollar currency index has a lot of weak currencies against it, which is why it's doing as well as it is. And Bitcoin relatively is actually not doing that badly, in my opinion. So that is really all I have for you guys. I'm going to love and leave you on that note. We will keep you up to date on everything. You know, we're not going anywhere on this channel. I made a promise when I started this channel that we'd be here through the good and the bad. And that's something that we're going to continue. You know, this channel is going to be here 20, 30 years from now, talking about crypto and giving our view on it. You know, we're not going anywhere. I'm not a fair-weathered kind of guy. Lots of individuals disappearing at the moment. One, because the views just aren't as good as they were when everything was going through the roof, which really annoys me, because you shouldn't just stick around when things are good and going up. It's when things are going down that you'll make more money than when things are going up. Investing when things are down is smarter than investing when things are up, typically. Now, that doesn't mean you want to catch a falling knife, but it was the bear market that made me my money. You know, I'm not a YouTuber. I made my money in crypto, which has allowed me the freedom to not have to work and to be able to create YouTube videos during the day. Way off topic. On that note, guys, I'm going to love and leave you. If you've enjoyed this content, a like is always appreciated. So is a comment. I'm going to look forward to seeing each and every one of you in the next YouTube video. Leave your thoughts below, guys, because I'd be intrigued to find out what you guys think. Stay safe out there, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you in the next YouTube video.